Hi, I'm normally pretty certain about my actions and about how I feel, but suddenly last week I started to oscillate between excitement for the future, health fears, economic anxiety, and even I guess I describe it as confusion. So I wanted to know what the leading emotions are for other people that might be around me and other business professionals. So we did a casual survey last week. We actually asked 35,000 professionals who had formerly worked in an office on site 4 to 5 days per week. And we asked across the nation, really looking for their emotional health, and we had 1,500 respondents approximately. We will release the survey and all the results this week, but it wasn't completely closed at the time that I started writing this article. So the first and most important question that I want to talk about today is, if tomorrow the economy and workplaces open up and you could return to work on site exactly as you did pre-COVID, what is the leading emotion that comes to mind for you? And when I looked at the survey, not surprisingly, I think you would feel the same way, that the leading emotional state is uncertainty. So among 1,317 people who formerly worked on site a majority of the time, 37% are just not sure. About 20% are happy to return, and about the same have fear and anxiety. Now, when you add all that up, that's 57% of people are generally kind of scared. So the highest level of uncertainty was between 30 and 49-year-olds, and women generally had a little bit more uncertainty and fear than most men who replied. So here I am working in an empty office with empty streets behind me and, no one here, and it's hard not to feel uncertain. So I asked other leaders and I turned to other business professionals and said, what are you doing around uncertainty? And together we came up with 10 ideas. Today I'm only going to address 4 of them because I want to try to be brief. But if you would like, obviously, all of them, I will send you, the full gamut. But for now, let's look at what we garnered. So the first thing was offering certainty around dates. You're going to say, well, what do you mean certainty with dates? We don't have dates. But here's what I learned. One client told all of their team that they will not be returning before September 1st. So no matter what the government says, no matter what's possible, they've given a firm date to their employees that it will not be before September 1st. One of my team members who's really into space said to me that in space exploration, they use net dates, and that means not earlier than. And I thought that was interesting because he said maybe employers could offer a not earlier than date. And I thought that was kind of clever. So we might not know what the date is, but at least we can provide some certainty around it's not before X date. And then others are saying we're simply following whatever the government says, that's what we're doing. And I think that's interesting too, because again, for employees, it gives them a chance to figure out what might be possible. The second thing is to offer certainty around physical safety. Now, can we be completely certain about others' physical safety? Probably not, but at least to some degree, we can say we're following all of the guidelines of the government. When you return, we will do the following shifts, or people will work in closed spaces, or there will be somebody in between each person, or we're going to wear masks, or our lunch spaces will be closed. Now, we won't outline here. We might do that a little bit later in another discussion, but for right now, we won't go fully into physical safety, but certainly the point is to demonstrate to the anxious and fearful employee that you're taking those safety considerations seriously. Now, the third element was around creating certainty around emotional safety. And this one's a little bit harder because fear sometimes isn't rational, or sometimes it is rational actually, but in the current context, we don't necessarily know what is and is not rational. So something that we discussed internally and that we're doing ourselves is to do a bit of a simulation. And in the simulation, we're looking at the past, the now, and the future. So in the past, we're asking the employee to describe for us what it looked like for them. Now, did they get up in the morning, they rolled out of bed, they got ready, they came into the office. Maybe they got their child to school, they took public transit, they bought a coffee at the local coffee shop, they spoke to Joe down the hall about some kind of joke or the news, and they went on to start their day, had their favorite sandwich at their local spot, got home and asked their hubby or their spouse, tell me about your day. What was that all about? Well, what would it look like today? And so now suddenly we move into the now. What is the now? Do they get ready? Do they wear root sweatpants all day with something that looks professional on the top, or maybe nothing at all on the bottom? We've heard that from a few people. Actually, 3 out of 1,500 people responded that they actually don't wear bottoms, but that's a different subject. So we'll share more later about that. So You look at the individual who is in the now and they're saying, okay, what am I doing? I'm seeing my spouse 17 times at the fridge all day. When we run into each other to get snacks, maybe their child is crying and needs a little bit of support. Maybe they're offering homework help or whatever that might look like. Plus, they're being productive and focused and organized in their workspace. And what does that look like? But they're happy because they're not commuting. They're happy because they're not spending money outside the home. Maybe they're having more time with their family. However, the division between work and home is really almost invisible. Go on to the future and you look at a return. What does that return look like? Are they commuting again? Is the commute easier? Is that lovely coffee shop they loved, are they still in business? Do they still see Joe down the hall, or are they on different shifts? So what has transformed for that person upon their return, not strictly around the performance of the work that they have to achieve, but what happens to them when they get back? So then the final piece of that is doing kind of an ideal blend. First, you define obviously what the company needs, because the company still has requirements around performance and productivity and some non-negotiables that are required. But for the employee, they can possibly dictate as well. The ideal for me looked like this. When I married all of that together, this is what it would look like for me to have an ideal scenario. And then it would allow the HR professional or maybe the direct line manager to say, if we could create that ideal with you, what would that look like? So we don't have all the answers around what it would look like, but I think this conversation changes something because it allows the employer and the employee to really talk about what's possible. And if it was possible to offer that ideal blend, that could be pretty exciting too. So we'll move forward. I was going to discuss how many people are happy to return to work. And I think we saw that 21% of people said they'd be really thrilled to go back to work and excited. Among the under 30 population, it was a bit higher at about 25%. But what is really interesting here is that only 8% said they would like to work on site full time. And so that changes something in the mindset of creating that ideal, because we can see that only not even 1 in 10 is hoping to return to work full time on site. So I'm going to go to the fourth element of what we're suggesting employers can do to create certainty. And then the rest of that we'll provide to you within an article or newsletter that we'll submit to you, or that you could email us at our address and request it, and we'll send it to you. But on the fourth element is around our toolbox for our leaders. I think when all of this ends, our leaders are going to be faced with things they've never seen before. They're going to have people refusing to work, and work refusals, and addressing being scared to work. But then, is fear a legal ground for not working? We're going to see people who bring in medical notes for anxiety. And how do we manage all these medical leaves? And is fear a bona fide reason to stay home? So we're going to be addressing all sorts of unusual circumstances, and leaders today, like before, but even more than ever, they're looking at culture as the new currency. But how do they create culture in a time when things are so strange and they don't necessarily know what to do with that? So an important element for all of us is to create that toolbox for the leader. So the rest of the points, as we said, we'll share a little bit later. If you are interested either in looking at our simulation and what we did internally, and we can even send an example of a completed one, please email us. If you'd like a copy of the full survey and all of the results also, might be worth, we'll email us or click through. And in the meantime, we'll wish you safety and wellness in your space as you are right now.